pockets of people who are, digging really, really new stuff that is very, very far removed from what is, on Billboard Top 40 or whatever Columbia Records is selling. However, and that's changing and affecting certain people. MySpace is a great resource, all that type of stuff. So there's a lot more access, a lot more. I think people are defining more of their stuff, but I think they're also getting tired. I think people are starting to burst under the weight of their own responsibility. It's like, I'd like to see more the sort of resurgence, maybe selfishly, the resurgence of the sort of cultural gatekeeper, where there are trusted people who listen to stuff and say, this is really, really good. You want to listen to this. This is, and that's so much. Like Pitchfork Media, or Pitchfork and Indie Place, they do that to a certain extent, but I go to them to see what the hipster kids are listening to. I don't go to them to look at what I'm going to like. So, but I think there are certain, so I think there are certain, I don't want to say demographics, but certain circles that are doing very, very well, and I will call it experimental in the sort of like progressive, prog rock, 10,000, strings and people, playing triangles upside down. Like, nobody's doing that. But, people who are just making music that speak to the time, to these particular people. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just, folks who are in Williamsburg and, can wear really pointy shoes or something. I don't know.
But sometimes the problem is that when you talk about music, of course you and I have very varied interests and we explore things. But for a lot of people, what they get in music is either what's marketed directly to them or, via music as part of a film or as part of this trend or a part of a commercial. There's a lot of people don't explore it because of the excess that is out there. You can't choose which identity that you want to have because there's so many identities to be had.
Exactly. The pressure, that's what I'm saying, the pressure to make your own identity. You don't really, some people really don't know. Yeah, there aren't,
And in our culture, you're expected to have a limited repertoire of identities. Otherwise, you're deemed socially deviant as a schizophrenic, or, you have multiple personality disorders, or, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's so funny, because I feel like that's so much more expected now, like the playlist, like, it's a signal of like, I'm so complicated, you'll never know how complicated
But that in itself is an identity that's been limited down.
Yeah, I think it's a cliche, it's an utter cliche. It's like, I'm going to be silly and listen to 80s hair bands, but I'm also going to have some, I'm going to have Billie Holiday, Gloomy Sunday or something, and that's my deep soulful self.
Yeah.
And just because I listen to Pussycat Dolls doesn't mean I'm totally ridiculous. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? It's sort of meta communication.
The eclectic is kind of... But the eclectic becomes its own identity, and so you can never be eclectic, and then I'm only going to listen to satanic death metal, and then, because that eventually just feeds into your eclectic identity, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
And so you can never really, once you have the eclectic, you're just one of everything. You can't ever have multiples.
Like, it's like anything that's outside sort of the binary is sort of an ironic nod. Do you know what I mean? Like, people, like, it's like, what I mean by that there are certain people I know who are really, really great and they're wonderful, but they'll throw out certain bands, like certain subcultural references out to be like,
we know
I'm
this.
but they'll do it because they'll know I'll know it, and they'll also know that signifies that they're rebellious and they're something, they're not what they appear.
Their consumption is a cultural production.
Right. And and it's, however, the main sort of streams, and maybe again, I'm not, I'm not 16 years old and I'm not in high school breathing and living youth culture, but it seems that it's so much more stifled. That even the stereotypes of the 80s and the 90s, as cliche as they were, at least they were varied. Like when I'm with kind of, between, 14 and 18-year-olds, I feel like there's really, they have their own identities and their own interests, kind of that, like, sort of eclectic. It's like, okay, you're allowed to be eclectic within this sort of parameter. But then, like, the gals still have to have, your hair can only be this long, and you have to wear your, you gotta wear your Ugg boots, and you gotta be, you know what I mean? Like, there's
the cookie cutter.
like, you can listen to as much
Out there
silly.
music.
Yeah, you can listen to Ani DeFranco, but as long as your hair is straight curled and
Well, and
straight curled.
that's an interesting thing too, the evolution of high school cliques in a way. Because I know when I was in high school, you had the jocks, the goths, and
Yeah.
the typical but I
Band
think you
kids
really
and
start to see the hipster has kind of made a return in that sense. Your thick glasses wearing kind of, and it's become the new preppy in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's medium and large. That's what I was kind of saying. It's like you either have, there's like the sort of the straight, straight shooting, no prep, or you have the hipster. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, God forbid, that's my whole interest, but or if you're emo, other, some sort of odd, theater, dark, depressive, God help you.
Yeah.
God help you, because you are the bottom of the totem pole.
Well, at the same time, though, you think about the new hipster prep movement and kind of the emo and scenester ideas. I wonder almost if instead of Giddens is saying, there's this excess of information, but I almost wonder if it's all being funneled into one thing. Because, your preppy kid is your hipster, he's your slightly rebellious jock who's doing well in school.
Well, I think there's a pressure to function as all of those things for these kids. I think that there's sort of this pressure to do it, and it's
Be everything to everyone.
At all times.
At all times.
And it's problematic.
And therein lies an excess of itself.
And granted, I'm not 16 anymore. But I'm not seeing the visual representation. I'm not hearing it, and I'm not when you walk down the street, I'm not seeing kids who look too different. Like every once in a while, I'll see some kids who are just being a little bit, and it doesn't have to be a physical manifestation, but it can be something as some patches on the back.
But could that be because what was provocative has been over-provoked so much that we don't see the differences? For us, I know for me in high school, provocative was having your head shaved and being a buff kind of anti-entity, in the sense that you weren't the prep or the athlete or anything like that. And so, but now that's my normal look, and that's how I operate. Not under the conditions of being that identity, but in a sense, we see what's provocative isn't so provocative. It's changed.
I would argue that physical manifestations of identity are, since certainly 1999, certainly after September 11th, you are persona non grata. You, unless you're in particular circles, I function in a group. I'm not a very marked person, but I know a lot of folks who are very, very marked, whether it be, tattooing, piercing, hairstyle, just how they enter a room. It's just a very marked person in a subculture, marked by their subcultural identity. And it's hard enough being an adult who does that, because people will comment, and
because it's considered childish.
Sometimes there's people who are genuinely curious. They're like, if you have a funny a unique person, like they're genuinely like, it looks beautiful in you, but that type of thing. And then there's the why would you do that to such a pretty face?
That you're expected to have this typical